Bring in Chad Wolf, former acting Homeland Security Secretary, to talk more about this. First of all, let's just talk about the immigration crisis as a whole. Jen Psaki actually won't even address it as an actual crisis. Nancy Pelosi calls it a humanitarian crisis. It seems that they just can't get their vocab to mesh, but never mind what you call it, it doesn't matter. The point is, it is indeed a crisis. And Kamala Harris, where is she? She's supposed to be looking at the root cause of it, right? That was the job she was given. So where is Kamala Harris in all this?
Well, you're absolutely right. And whether you call it a crisis or a challenge, the reality is we are seeing historic numbers on that southwest border of illegal apprehensions of minors, of families, most of those being released into the U.S. It's overwhelming the Border Patrol, it's overwhelming DHS, and it's overwhelming local communities. So any way you cut it, there is a crisis going on at the border. It doesn't seem to be ending anytime in sight because we know the Biden administration right now is not pursuing any policies that will stem the flow of these individuals coming into the country. And of course, you showed that video of those two young girls being thrown over a border fence. That is the direct result of this administration advertising that it is okay, that they will continue to allow minors to stay in the country if they arrive at the border. It is an inhumane policy, and we are seeing the results of that.
I mean, the video is just horrifying. I mean, the two little toddlers are plopped down onto our side of the border. There is the agent who rescued these two little girls. Now they have no family, and they're now going to join the some 5,767 children in Customs and Border Patrol custody as of just this past Sunday, and those numbers are skyrocketing. In fact, CNN is reporting that the U.S. is on track to record 2 million migrants on the southern border by the end of the year. What is the plan to make it stop? Forget the focus on the root of the cause. How about just the solution?
Well, that's just it. Again, I've said that the administration continues to address this issue as though it's a capacity issue, trying to bring on more facilities and facilitating the introduction of these individuals into the country. And that is the wrong approach. You've got to address the illegal behavior that's happening at that border to stop the flow, to stop the tide that is coming in and the surge that is coming in. So that's really where they need to be focused. It's not where they're focused today. So I urge them to change course in doing that. But again, you talked about the minors. There's over 5,000, about 5,000 in custody, CBP custody, another 7,000 or 8,000 in HHS custody. And for DHS, that's almost double what we saw in the height of the crisis in 2019, when so many on the far left and others were so outraged at what was going on in the border. They have doubled the amount of minors in CBP facilities today. And then again, it's a direct result of these policies that they have been pursuing since Inauguration Day. There are ways to fix this. Right. And Border Patrol and DHS can stem the tide very, very quickly.
Chad, I want to talk to you about another growing crisis, and it's a new Fox News analysis, which shows that crime surging in Democrat-led cities that slashed police funding last year. This is an issue. Murders up 46% in Minneapolis, 271% in Portland, Oregon, 12% here in New York City, 28% in Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles County, more controversy around new District Attorney George Gascon, who critics call pro-criminal. Sources reportedly saying that he's planning to downsize and rename the city's hardcore gang unit. The sister of a man killed by a gang member speaking here this morning. Watch.
I just can't believe that he's actually making this action. It was actually the work of the gang unit and the hardcore gang unit in the DA's office that really kind of pull this case together. It is really unfortunate because these gangs in LA streets are very, very real, and they're very, very dangerous. Quite often, which is in the case of my brother, innocent people are caught in the crossfire of this gang activity.
I mean, this is no surprise. An uptick in crime when different Democratic-led counties are reducing their budgets for police. I mean, what did they expect was going to happen? That all the criminals were going to go into hiding?
Well, this is exactly what we talked about last summer, when this big push to defund the police and really to look closely at police procedures. What we did in the Trump administration is we came out with a set of reform principles that we believe that the law enforcement community could back, and they did. But what we saw from the left, again, is going very much beyond that and going to defund the police, take down gang units, and other measures. And we see the dramatic and detrimental effects that that is having. And we see places like Minneapolis and Portland that have now trying to retract some of the measures that they took over the summer. But it's certainly not working. And some of these big cities that have this approach, whether it's Seattle, Minneapolis, Portland, or there's 3 or 4 others,
right.
They're going in the wrong direction. They're going in the wrong direction, and they need to take a playbook out of those other large cities that have made police reform not only prosperous in a sense of making sure that you're bringing in
right.
more resources, you're providing the leadership and the training to police.
Here's
and
what
you
I
can
want
do
to
that
know.
in a very productive way.
I want to know where the Biden administration stands in all of this, because you remember there was sort of a back and forth about whether Joe Biden during the election supported defund the police movement or didn't. And he did come forward finally after a lot of pressure, because he was silent on it for quite some time, and said that he did not support defund the police, but he, however, thought that each city or each county needed to deal with it on its own. But at what point does the Biden administration stand up and tell these counties, look, this is not the time to be slashing budgets? If there has ever been a time to get behind the men and women in blue, protecting our country and our innocent civilians, the time is now.
Well, you're exactly right. The president has the largest microphone out there. And
sure.
So when he speaks or members of his administration speak, some folks do listen. And so they need to come out. They need to support the men and women in blue. They need to back law enforcement, because at the end of the day, these are the individuals that put their lives on the line to protect our communities, big and small. And they need to have the backing of their commander-in-chief. They need to have the backing of the president. And every day and every week that he's silent and he doesn't talk about this. And we see, news in Portland, they are still targeting federal facilities and federal agents in Portland today. And again, the administration is silent on that. It seems as though they only want to talk about the events of January 6th here in D.C., but if there's violence towards other federal officers or facilities, they don't want to talk about it.
I always say silence speaks volumes. Chad Wolf, thank you very much for talking to us.